So I wanted to provide an update in regards to the situation that we've been dealing with that actually began last night at 7 p.m. when we became aware of the parental abduction, which unfortunately has led to the homicide that we are now dealing with. I won't reiterate everything as I already did earlier this morning, but there was some information available in regards to where is the suspect now, right? We had him in custody and what happened from that point. So what I want to elaborate on, and remember, please keep in mind this is an active investigation, so there's always things that are unfolding. When we did take custody of the individual with OPP earlier this morning, our officers at that time did notice that there was a medical concern. They were concerned about his well-being. At that point, that individual was taken to hospital to ensure that they were okay and fit to go forward. At that point, as the morning has unfolded, that hospital felt that the issue needed to be looked at a different center. Therefore, the individual was transported to a trauma center, however, has maintained in police custody throughout this process. And we will stand by until he is medically cleared. So that's where we are with the status of the individual, and why, while we had hoped that he would be transferred to the division to begin the processing, we had to obviously ensure that there's no medical issue that we're dealing with. We have to have him medically cleared before we can move forward. The other thing that I want everyone to be aware of is, I know there were questions in regards to charges and where we're at and the process, and I want everyone to be aware that we are going forward, we are proceeding with a first-degree murder charge. Okay, so that is where we're at now.
But the charge has not been laid yet.
So it's gone to court for the information, and it will be laid.
There's no SIU mandate invoked in this bill.
There is no SIU invoked at this time. No.
Can I ask, what time did Peel Police initially get the call yesterday, and when did you become concerned for her safety, for the overall safety?
Oh, absolutely. So the mother of the child actually attended here at 22 Division just before 7 p.m. At that point, relayed the information in regards to her daughter that had been given to the father as part of their arrangement for visitation. Unfortunately, the time for return for the daughter came and went. She had not obviously returned. She was concerned for her well-being. She had received contact through the father, which had her even more concerned in regards to her daughter's well-being, which is why she then attended 22 Division, and we began our investigation immediately.
At what time did the Amber Alert go out?
So the Amber Alert went public, so that's not when we began it, but when it actually went out was just around 11:30, I believe, or just prior to 11:30 it went out.
Just for the purpose of people who don't understand the process, can you explain what happened between 7 and 11, like as far as the police went looking for this young girl? Like, what sort of steps did you take?
Of course. So the moment we start looking into an investigation, we have to look at all the facts and issues. So they have a process in regards to obviously speaking with the mother, getting as much detail and information that's available regarding the possible location or whereabouts, where they normally go to. And as they're getting that information, they're actually feeding it out to the officers out on the road. So for instance, just for an example, the description of the vehicle, we had that right away, right at the very beginning, and right away our officers notified, look out for this vehicle, we're looking for these individuals, we are concerned about the well-being of the 11-year-old girl. So right away that information goes out, and then on top of that, once we are saying no, we're not getting much, or we're concerned that they actually might have driven further out of our region, we'll actually share that information with the surrounding regions as well, so that they can be aware that this is what we're looking for. So that's well before it goes public to everyone else's knowledge. We're doing our ground searches, we're looking at all their regular locations. And during that process, once they determine that they have enough that qualifies for an Amber Alert, they'll actually start that process and submit the information to OPP so that the Amber Alert can be issued. Obviously, the timeline between us issuing it and when it actually goes out, there's obviously some time in between there, but that's a process that, like anything, there's a procedure for everything and it must be followed.
What time did police ask for that Amber Alert to be issued?
I don't have the exact time of when the official document went through. What I do know is that we were actively investigating and searching for the individuals. As soon as we got the concern from the parent, we began.
What time will Raj Kumar be formally laid? When do we expect him to be charged with first-degree murder?
So as soon as we get that, we're going to do a formal news release on that, so that you'll have that information. Once it has to go before the courts for the information, and once it goes through, then it will become.
Will he be remanded in hospital, in that trauma center? So will those charges be read out to him in hospital today?
Depending on the situation in regards to when he gets medically cleared, then of course they'll go forward from there. But remember, he will maintain in police custody throughout this process.
Was
What
106
time
Hanson?
was the public made aware of this incident?
So I know we did put out a news release for a parental abduction. I'm sorry, I don't recall the time when that release went out, but that was right. That did go out earlier. I'm sorry, I don't know
That
the
was
time.
the initial communication.
Yes.
Was
yeah.
106 Hanson checked before the Amber Alert went out? Like, did the police go by that?
So,
address?
as is common in any kind of missing person, or when we're looking for any individual, we do go to all the regular locations where there will be door knocks or checks for the vehicle. In this case, the vehicle was not at that residence at that time of the incident.
And what time did you check 106? And was there anybody home?
So I don't know the exact time, but someone would be sent there almost immediately to go and check the residence to see if anybody was home.
Was that
What's
the
the
father's
rule on
residence?
The father does own the residence and does reside.
What time was he arrested?
So he was taken into custody by a really OPP shortly after 12 a.m.
He owns the residence. He's not renting the residence, or
To my knowledge, he owns the residence.
And the medical emergency, was it a physical injury?
Unfortunately, again, as the investigation is unfolding, I'm not the exact details as to what it is. I'm not privy to. However, it is obviously there was a medical condition or a concern that they were worried about, and they said we need to have this looked at. And obviously, he was taken to hospital where they could do their examination by the proper physicians. At which point, unfortunately, sometime after, they decided that he actually needed to go to a trauma center, in which he was then taken to a trauma center. And again, once he's medically cleared, we'll move forward from there, but he will maintain in police custody.
I'd like to ask about this. You've got a call that there's an 11-year-old, there's a threat on her life. You have the address of the father. What is the process for, in essence, knocking that door down? And why was there, from 7 o'clock, neighbors say there were police there in the 7 o'clock hour. So was there any consideration? Did someone make a decision to not knock the door down? And what is
So
the rule
I
on
definitely see what you're
just
going at.
asking the
No,
question.
absolutely is. Because remember, in the end, we did actually force entry into the residence. So as the investigation was unfolding, at some point in the investigation, they received enough information that they felt that the girl, the 11-year-old girl, could in fact be in the residence and was in need of assistance. So with that information, that threat for somebody's life, they were able to force entry, right? We need those extenuating circumstances to gain entry into somebody's residence. To do a door knock, no problem, but if nobody answers, that's sort of as far as we go. The vehicle isn't there, we don't have anything else to go on. But as the
But there was a
investigation
threat, though,
unfolded,
on her life.
yeah, so I realized it, but as the investigation unfolded, they did receive information that they did believe she was in the residence, and as soon as they had that information, they proceeded with that.
It's fair to say that when you guys got there at 7 or around 7, you didn't have enough information to go.
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you
So
were
from-
there around
From,
7.
just to follow up on what Joe was saying, so by the time he was arrested, it wouldn't have taken you guys long then to do that exigent entry into that 106 address, correct? How much
So
time
just
passed?
to get an idea, so remember that the Amber Alert went public after just before 11:30. We gained entry
It
into.
was before that.
Was it up-
It
sorry.
was on the 11 o'clock news. Pretty sure I
Okay,
saw it at
so
11 o'clock.
in and around that 11 o'clock, we gained entry into the residence in and around that 11 o'clock time as well, with the information that we had from our ongoing investigation throughout the evening. And then we did receive information on the vehicle, which led OPP to the arrest of the suspect in another location just after
So
12
was entry
a.m.
gained before the arrest? Or
Yes,
It was?
yes.
And can you tell us what that information was that you...
No, unfortunately, I can't get into that.
How long
Can you
had she
explain the
been
medical
deceased before police found?
So we don't have the exact timeline on that. Remember, you have to take into consideration that there's a postmortem that will be done, and hopefully maybe they'll be able to give us a better timeline on that, but we don't actually know.
Do you think that if the Amber Alert had been issued a little bit earlier, that the outcome might have been any different here?
I honestly don't know. The sad reality is it went out when it did, and officers were close and nearby. I think a lot of them were really affected by the fact that they were actively searching for this girl, and this is the outcome that we're now dealing with.
Okay.
Can we speak to the injuries that the accused is facing right now, or why he's in hospital?
All I know is that there was a medical issue and there was concern for that, and then he was taken to hospital.
How long
Yes,
could he
this
be
medical
there?
issue.
How long could he be there?
I don't know when or how long the timeline is, but he will be in police custody throughout that
Did
time.
he
Do you know when it
suicide
was
call
discovered, though?
tomorrow
It
night?
wasn't discovered when he was arrested. Was it discovered after the OPP turned custody over?
When so when we went to take over custody, our officers noted that there was obviously some kind of medical issue. At that point, the hospital, he was transferred to hospital.
Death was pronounced at the scene.
Yes.
Who did that?
I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to speak to it. I do know that a coroner did attend later on as well.
And my last question: any history of violence, between domestic violence between that?
I don't know their history, so I wouldn't want to misspeak in regards to what may or may not be going
Constable
on.
Marttini, this might be for next time, and it's
Okay.
tough to put you on the spot like this, but my question would be to the acting chief would be, is there going to be a review into the process in terms of entering a home when there's a child that's under threat and you know there's a threat, rather than waiting for the Amber Alert, which didn't come for hours later?
So
So maybe you could ask that for next time, because that's going to be my main question is, and I'm not saying that it would have made a difference, but that we're doing our job here.
No,
And we know that in the 7 o'clock hour there was police officers at that house, and the question is for the acting chief is why they didn't at least knock the door down. You can always put it back up later
Yeah.
to see, and if it would have made a difference. So you can comment now if you can, but
no,
please relay that
if the question is for the chief, then
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
I didn't want to put you on the spot because I know you don't
Absolutely.
know
No,
that now.
yeah, I can't speak to all of that, so I definitely don't want to, go out of line for that. The reality is it's a very difficult situation. The investigating officers did everything that they felt they could do during the entire process. It's a very unfortunate outcome, and everyone has to deal with that. The only thing that I can say is that, if anything, at least the individual, the suspect, isn't outstanding. We were able to apprehend him. And just remember that this is very hard for everyone that's been involved in the case and the family that they're having to deal with this. So at this point, it's one step at a time. We want to finish dealing with this portion of the investigation, and perhaps that would be something that would be looked at later.
And the bottom line is, if you guys felt you had grounds to go into that house at 7 o'clock, you would have done that.
Absolutely. If they felt that the circumstances were there, they would have proceeded.
And they weren't there at 7 o'clock.
That's correct.
Can you talk to the type of information you got around 11 or later on that helped you get in, which you didn't have at 7? Can you talk to that?
Unfortunately, no, I can't speak to that portion of the investigation as it's still unfolding.
Without being too gruesome, is there an assumption right now that the kid was probably dead really early on in the whole story? Or
So we won't get into the cause of death at all. At this
Maybe we could talk about her family and what they're going through now, or what you know about that. We don't know a lot about that yet.
No. Well, and so I did speak to the investigator that was talking with the mother. Obviously, this is very traumatic. It is her daughter. We're celebrating a joint birthday, so that's
Her birthday.
It was both their birthdays. It's very heart-wrenching, and I think that's what we have to remember, that this is a family, and she's now moving forward without her daughter, and it's very traumatic.
So it was Ria's birthday as well as the mother's birthday yesterday?
Yes.
The mother's birthday.
How long was that couple separated?
No, I don't know their history. Sorry.
Is there any criminal record here with the accused?
I haven't been informed of anything, so I wouldn't want to say without actually knowing 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.